Good morning, everyone. So I just started my English video and I was like about 2 minutes in, and the school group came because I guess I was close to a famous fountain. So if you want to see a video of the fountain, check out the French video at the beginning. But I'm still right next to this building here. So yeah, it's the Center for Performing Arts. So they have theater, they have dancing, and they have something else. So I still can't remember. And yeah, the statue was over there, but you can see there's a bunch of teenagers there. So yeah, I wanted to talk about yesterday. I didn't get a chance to make a video yesterday. I'm still in Zagreb, by the way. And yeah, so I thought I'd make a video about it. What about yesterday? So sorry, I'm just gonna find a nice place. So yeah, I didn't really get going till 11. And that was when the school, the walking tour started. And then this one girl was like, "I know you." And I really didn't know her. She didn't even look familiar. So I was like, what? And she's like, "Yeah, I'm in your hostel." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, I didn't recognize her at all. But yeah, she's Brazilian and she volunteers at the hostel. Yeah, and she's been here for a couple of weeks. She's like, "And I don't know anything about Zagreb, so I thought I'd do the tour." So yeah, she didn't. At the end of the tour, she didn't really like it. She thought he just promoted a lot of his stuff, which was true. Like a couple of times, he was like, "Oh, you should really eat at this restaurant, and you should try this, and you should try that," which I kind of understand. Like the way he framed, like on its own, it sounds a bit weird that he's promoting all this stuff. But he did frame it in a way that like people always ask me, where should I eat? What should I eat? And so this is, I've just, instead of answering everyone individually, I just made a video for everyone. Whoops, nope, that's not what I want to do. Go back. There we go. So he gave us like a pamphlet of what he recommends doing. So yeah, that was slightly strange, but I kind of understand because she didn't. She was like, "I would not ask my tour guide where to eat. I would ask the hostel." I was like, "Yeah, but that's the same." I don't know. I kind of disagreed with her. I was like, "It's the same thing whether you ask the hostel or the tour guide. Like, they can still be biased." But anyway, but I did think it was kind of weird that he gave a pamphlet. Like, I don't know. But anyway, so the tour. It was quite a big tour. There was about 40 of us for just this one tour guide, but like he had a pretty powerful voice, so it ended up being okay. I don't know if I should do it like this so you can see the building, but that may be. So it was okay, but yeah, every time that we stopped somewhere there was like 40 of us, so we were all had to like group up and yeah, gather. So we like usually blocked a lot of the streets, so not great. But yeah, otherwise, so the three interesting things I found during that tour. The first interesting thing is that Zagreb started as two different towns. There was Capital and the other one. Capital was more like the religious one. So like it was ruled by a bishop, and it's where the cathedral is, and there were a lot of churches, and like even now, that's why like when you go on that side of the town, you have the cathedral, and then within a small radius you have two churches, and you have a retirement home for priests. You have just a lot of things, religious things. And then the other part, and even the things that aren't religious apparently belong on religious land, so they still pay rent to the church. He said that about 90% of the land on Capital now is still Catholic owned. And then you had the other town, forgot the name of it, but yeah, it was more secular, so you didn't have like it was not made for the church or by the church or anything like that. And then so between those two hills there was a small river with a bridge between them. And the bridge was called the Bloody Bridge because that's where they settled their differences, because there was a bit of rivalry going on. So whenever they had a dispute, they would just settle it on the Bloody Bridge. And yeah, it turns out it could get bloody. So that was the first thing I found interesting. The second thing is Martins, apparently back then, were used a lot in trading, because it was like the fur was very, very valuable, and so it was just a bit like money. It was just like, well, I'll give you this many marten pelts for your house or whatever. And now kuna, so the currency of Croatia, derives from the word for marten in Croatian. And even on the 1 kuna coin and 2 kuna coin, you can see a marten on them, because that's sort of the history of it. And the third interesting thing, oh right, somebody who lived in Zagreb within a span of 80 years would have changed nationality 6 times, going from Austro-Hungarian to Croatian to Yugoslavian, back to Croatian. Like, it would go just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And so yeah, 6 different passports within a span of 80 years, so within a lifetime. So I thought that was quite interesting. During the tour, and there was also the cannon blast. So at noon exactly, there's a cannon on top of the hill of the sort of not capital that blasts. And he was like, if you want to film it, go ahead, but hold on to your phones, like really hold on to them, because I have 4 people already who have dropped their phones because it's so loud. So I'm not joking, it is loud. Hold on to your phones. So I held onto my phone. And yeah, and they do it because it used to be that they would ring a bell at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. to let people know when the gates would be open and closed. But now they do a cannon blast at noon. I forget exactly why they changed it to, oh right, so that all the church bells could ring at the same time. Because otherwise, like, one would start earlier and later. So it's like, no. There's a cannon blast, then you ring your bells. And even though now, like, it's automatic, like, people aren't there ringing the bells, it's still a tradition, and yeah, and for tourism. He's like, you're... And then, this one guy during the tour asked, like, but, like, what are you firing? And the guy was like, nothing. Like, it's just a blank. Like, nothing comes out of the cannon. It's just to make a lot of noise. He's like, I think the people in Zagreb would be pretty mad if every day at noon we just shot a cannonball in the city, like, randomly. And he was like, oh yeah, I guess so. But after the tour, he mentioned a little bit about, like, the war of independence of Croatia from Yugoslavia. And he's like, but if you want to know more, there's a tour at 3 o'clock, the war tour. So if you want to know more about that, like, stick around, I'll give you some information about it. So at the end of the tour, I stuck around, and then this girl was also quite interested in the war tour, so we start talking a little bit. She's from Northern Ireland. And I was like, yeah, I'm all for it. It was 20 euros, so it was more than, well, definitely more than a free tour. But even more than, like, a person would usually tip. But anyway. But I was like, well, I'm only in Zagreb once. I'll take the war tour. And she was torn, and she's like, well, I'll see you after lunch. And so yeah, we decided to have lunch together. I just ate at a bakery, and then we just had a beer at a beer garden somewhere. And no, we started talking. So yeah, she's Northern Irish, but she lives in Germany, and she speaks French, and yeah, she seems to be really keen on traveling and doing all that sort of stuff. But yeah, more about her later. And then so then we did the war tour. So the war tour was not the same guide, and it was a way smaller group, which was good. Hello, this little dog. No. Oh. So yeah, so we did the war tour. Really interesting war tour. Well, not really interesting. Like, I really wish I could have changed it a little bit, just because there's a bunch of things that I think should be changed, even the order of how they mention things. But it is quite funny, because the war tour was about the war of 91 to 95, but to start it, they go all the way back to, like, before World War I. They're like, let's go way back, just because it's it's a jumble of things. It's Croatia, and then against Serbia, but then Serbia against all the others, and then during Yugoslavia, like Serbia had most of the power because they had most of the people, but then like that's not cool with Croatia because they're still a part of it and they have no say. But then there's Serbs living in Croatia, and so they don't want to leave Serbia. It's just, yeah, it was really difficult for us to understand. But then we would ask her, and she's like, "Listen, it's hard for us too. Like there's and I think she tried to be as objective as possible, but it's hard." She's like, "I'm still Croatian," and yeah, she was 30 years old, and she's like, "I still have memories of the war, of like when things happened." She's like, "I still remember like hearing the sirens and knowing, oh, I need to go to the shelter." Even though Zagreb itself, she's from Zagreb, and Zagreb itself like wasn't bombed that much, but yeah, she still had some feelings and emotions towards it just because she lived through it. So yeah, it was quite an interesting tour. Like we did a couple of things, including the tunnels that were used during World War II, and then we talked about Tito. And it's strange so far. Every time I've heard talk about Tito, whether it's Slovenia or here in Croatia, it doesn't feel like they're completely against or completely for. Oh, it sounds like, yeah, he kept us together. That's true. Like, I don't know. They seem to be opinionless. Like, they don't really mind, which is a bit strange for a dictator, but. Anyway, so that was something interesting from that tour. But then I guess the part where I talked later on with a Northern Irish girl about was they showed us this movie, which I thought really helped in a way that like they had several parts to it, and one of them was a play-by-play of the war of like, okay, on this day, Croatia and Slovenia declare their independence and walk out from conference. So like really puts things in perspective, and they had a map there which also helped to understand how things went on. But yeah, what she had an issue with, she thought it was like hilarious just because it looked like a high school person had done it right after learning how to make movies. Just because like the transitions had like a camo background as like the title would be put on. And it's like, I'm not sure that's I wouldn't say appropriate, but like, yeah, I'm not sure I would have done it that way. Or the music during the transitions were like epic music, like battle music and all that, and it's like, nah, like I think you could have gone for something else. And yeah, there was also a part, so she was like, that had nothing to do there, which I'm torn about. And it's there was a lot of music, like propaganda music, so they showed like music that was done during that time from Croatians or from outsiders telling like how like peace was needed in Yugoslavia. So that made her laugh. She's like, what was that doing there? Like yeah, I kind of got it, but yeah, I don't think it really belonged there. I think it maybe in a different place, but anyway. But yeah, I think one of the most moving parts of that tour was during that small video. There was an interview with a Serbian soldier, like while he was in action or like deployed, and they were like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "I don't know." And they're like, But like, what's your purpose? Like, what are you trying to do? He's like, I don't know. Like, I think they're trying to be independent, but I don't know. Right now, I'm just trying to stay alive. And they're like, oh. And he's like, yeah, no, this is. And then he would swear a lot, so I'm censoring myself. But he's like, no, this is really messed up. My friends are dead. And they're like, oh, like, how many of your friends? He's like, well, 3 died today. And he's like, none of the officers. The officers don't get killed. We get killed. And then, yeah, they asked him like, what do you think about Croatia or something like that? He's like, I don't care. Like, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. That's it. I want to survive and get home, and that's all I want to do. And then their interviewer's like, oh, okay, well, good luck. And, oh, right. And then the interviewer again, where where it was like gut wrenching. It's like, but how old are you? And he's like, I'm 19. So yeah, and then he's like, I just want to go home. And the interviewer was like, okay, well, good luck. But that's it. It's just, yeah, it's, and she says, so she's like, no, I have Serbian friends, and like she's talked about like the first time she talked to somebody from Serbia, she heard their accent. She's like, oh, they're the enemy and everything. But she's like, no, they're just people. Like, and she got used to it. That now she has friends from Serbia, and apparently, the sort of general consensus is you don't talk about the war. Like, that's just not what you do. Even like if something slightly relevant comes up, you might mention it, but then change topics immediately. Like, you don't talk about it. So that was quite something. Oh right, and the second thing that sort of not shocked me, but I was like, I've never lived through this, so this is eye-opening. They showed a sticker album, so with little chocolates for kids, you would get a little sticker to put in your sticker album. And so before the war, it was like zoo animals, and so you get a little lion and put it in the lion sticker album, and you'd be all happy. And then during the war, it became soldiers. You'd be like, oh, I got the soldier with a bazooka, like I'll put him in the album. Oh, I got the rifle. And so yeah, it's just weird that suddenly they're all about it. And yeah, and the part that also, the last part I'll mention from the tour was that they showed, so I said Zagreb wasn't really part of the war, but they did get bombed. So at some point, Croatia found like that Serbia was not as active, and so they just did an Operation Flash, I think it was, or Flash or Storm, I think, but they're two operations. And because they were performed quite well, like they won a lot of territory, or won back a lot of territory, and so Serbia bombed Zagreb, but that's where they caught sort of international attention, is that they bombed Zagreb with these porcupine mines? No, I forget what they're called, but they're bombs basically dropped from the sky that like explode into tiny little bits and are just there to kill people. And they're not there to like burn down military buildings or destroy like military factories. No, they're there to kill people. And they bombed parks during the daytime in Zagreb, and so that kind of caught the international attention, because that's obviously, first of all, those bombs were against the Geneva Convention, and yeah, that caught international attention just because it was obviously, and right, targeting civilians as well. So yeah, that was the beginning of the end for that. And yeah, and then I think they bombed a hospital as well. And so yeah, and then it's still going on today. Apparently 2 years ago, this time it was a Croatian was being sentenced or trialed for his crimes against humanity, and he decided to kill himself instead and drank some poison. So yeah, right, and then the reason why it's such a jumble is because, so like during Yugoslavia you had Serbians and you had Croats, but then they decided later on like to change a bit of the political boundaries, and they're like, okay, we'll be a confederation, so there'll be different countries, but together, a bit like United Kingdom, together we make sort of one. And so Croatia was a thing, but it was part of a confederation, not just its own independent being. Whereas Serbia, I think, like had control of most of the votes anyway, so they basically ruled it. But yeah, but then within Croatia, there were some places that had Serb minorities. So when the war started, well, the war started because Croatia decided to be independent, but the Serb minorities were like, we don't, and so they started blocking, and then Serbia supported them, and so that's why it was just a big jumble between that. And then Bosnia got involved, and then Bosnia had Croat minorities within it, and it was just chaotic and mayhem. And that's where she was like, it doesn't really make sense to me either. Like it's very confusing, and it was confusing back then too. So yeah, that was the war tour. And so after that, I wanted to go up to see a viewpoint during the night, which was not great. And then the girl from Northern Ireland, or I guess lady from Northern Ireland, joined me. No, we talked a bit more, but so her feelings and thoughts about the tour. So then she told me like the video was nonsense, like they should not have that. I disagreed. I thought they should have it but change it. And no, and then she was from a different hostel, so she went back to her hostel. Oh yeah, and she, like, while my hostel was having the high school dance, basically their hostel was having a quiz night, which I deeply regret not going to. I would have loved a quiz night. And yeah, and then today I'm going to, so I'm changing my plans. Jen is meeting me in Belgrade on November 7th. So I'm not gonna have enough time to go to the Croatian coast and over to Sarajevo. So instead, I'm gonna go up to Budapest. That's gonna take me about 4 days to get there, and then spend some time there, and then down to Belgrade, and that's gonna take me about 4 days. The good thing is that on both ways, there's not a lot of mountains. I think I saw, for all 4 days, I just have 1,500 meters to climb. Which, I mean, I've done that in 1 day. It was a hard day, but still, like, divided within 4 days, it's fine. And yeah, that's about it. Oh right, so why I need to purchase something. I lost my water bottle at the hostel. I left it in the common room. I'm pretty sure I left it in the common room during the night, and then I couldn't find it in the morning. So yeah, I tried everywhere, can't find it. So I'm just wondering who would take a water bottle, especially a plastic one that like has been used. I don't get it, but yeah. So I'm off to go to a bike shop, see if they have one I could buy. Yeah, and they're not that expensive either. It's not like it's a commodity or anything. I don't know. So yeah, I'm off to a bike shop to see if they have a water bottle I could buy, and that's about it. All right, bye.